问一，这段注释一开始在处理哪个问题？ Question 1. What issue does this commentary address at the outset? 答：加尔文在处理为何以色列人可以宰杀牲畜吃肉，却不可以献祭这个章理。他先回顾前文以说明的原则。献祭只能在神所拣选的唯一圣所。Answer: Calvin is dealing with the tension of why the Israelites were permitted to slaughter animals for food, yet were forbidden to offer sacrifices wherever they pleased. He first recalls the principle already established earlier. Sacrifices were to be offered only at the one sanctuary chosen by God. 1. 这里为什么特别提到可以吃肉？ Question 2. Why does the passage specifically mention the permission to eat meat? 因为这段经文是在划清界限。牲畜若不是献给谁食物，就可以像野兽一样宰杀来限制。Answer: Because this passage is drawing a clear boundary. If the animals are not offered to God, but are eaten merely as food, they may be slaughtered like wild game, without restriction as to place. 问3. 为什么举筛子和鹿做例子？ Question 3. Why are the roebuck and the deer given as examples? 因为这两种动物从来不是献祭用的牲畜。加尔文藉此说明，这里谈的不是敬拜问题，而是日常饮食的许可。Answer: Because these two animals were never used for sacrifices. By this example, Calvin shows that the subject here is not worship, but the permission granted in ordinary eating. 问4. 既然可以吃肉，为什么仍然严禁吃血？ Question 4. If eating meat is permitted, why is the eating of blood still strictly forbidden? 哈，因为吃血这件事并不只与生命本身有关，血被禁止是因为血代表生命。Answer: Because the eating of blood is not merely a dietary regulation, but something that concerns life itself. Blood is forbidden because it represents life. 问5. 禁血是摩西律法才出现的吗？ Question 5. Did the prohibition of blood originate only with the Mosaic law? 不是。加尔文指出，神已命令挪亚和的后裔不可吃血，这早于摩西律法。Calvin points out that after the flood, God had already commanded Noah and his descendants to abstain from blood, long before the Mosaic law. 问6. 那为什么摩西时代要再次颁布这条命令？ Question 6. Why, then, was this command reissued in the time of Moses? 答：因为这条命令国中早已被忽视废弃，甚至可能连神的后裔。神重新颁布，是为了使他的百姓与外邦分别出 answer. Because this command had long been neglected and fallen into disuse among the nations, and perhaps was not even strictly observed among the descendants of Shem. God renewed it in order to distinguish his people from the heathen. 问7. 禁血真正的理由是什么？ Question 7. What is the true reason for the prohibition of blood? 答：因为血是生命的所在。加尔文强调，这不是关于礼仪洁净，而是关于对生命的态度。Answer: Because blood is the seat of life. Calvin emphasizes that this is not a matter of ceremonial purity, but of one's attitude toward life. 问8. 既然杀动物吃肉是被允许的，禁血还有什么实际作用？ Question 8. Since killing animals for food is permitted, what practical function does the prohibition of blood serve? 答：它是一种约束人心的操练。若人连受血都被教导要克制。Answer: It is a discipline that restrains the human heart. If people are taught to restrain themselves even from the blood of beasts, how much more should they revere and preserve human life? 问9. 这和不可杀人有什么关系？ Question 9. What connection does this have with the commandment, "You shall not murder"? 答：关系非常直接。神在禁止吃血之后，立刻宣告，凡流人血的，他的血也被人所流的。Answer: The connection is very direct. After forbidding the eating of blood, God immediately declares, "Whoever sheds man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed, because man was made in the image of God." 问4. 为什么加尔文把禁血的经文归在第6诫之下？ Question 10. Why does Calvin place the passages concerning the prohibition of blood under the 6th commandment? 因为第6诫的核心不是形式上的杀人与否，而是生命是否被视为宝贵。禁血是在训练人厌人， 尊重生命? Answer: because the heart of the sixth commandment is not merely the outward act of killing, but whether life is regarded as precious. The prohibition of blood trains people to abhor cruelty and to respect life. 问11: 既然吃血本看起来不是大罪，为何刑罚这么严重? Question 11. If eating blood appears in itself to be a minor offense, why is the punishment so severe? 答：正因为黑本身不大，却被反复强调重重处罚，才显明神真正要对付的不是事物，而是人心中的残忍与轻看生命。Answer: precisely because the act itself is small, yet is repeatedly emphasized and severely punished, it becomes clear that God's concern is not food, but the cruelty and contempt for life within the human heart. 问12: 摩西说血就是生命，是象征性的说法吗? Question 12. When Moses says the blood is the life, is this merely symbolic language? 答：加尔文指出，奥古斯丁认为这是生命的记号，但摩西的意思本身就在血中。Answer: Calvin notes that Austin understood this as meaning the sign of life, but Moses's meaning is more direct. The life of the animal itself is contained in the blood. 问13: 这项禁令只针对单独喝血吗? Question 13. Does this prohibition apply only to drinking blood by itself? 答：不是。加尔文强调，无论是单独吃血还是连同肉一起，都是被禁止的。生命记与利未记清楚说明。Answer: no. Calvin emphasizes that both eating blood by itself and eating it together with the flesh are forbidden, as is clearly stated in both Deuteronomy and Leviticus. Summary: 这段注释表明，禁血不是关于饮食洁净，而是神借着日常生活的限制，教导他的百姓敬畏生命，并把这种态度以不可流人血的根本诫命。This commentary shows that the prohibition of blood is not about dietary purity, but about God teaching his people, through ordinary restraints of daily life, to revere life, to abhor cruelty, and to direct this attitude toward the fundamental commandment, "You shall not shed human blood."